There's a moment in every transformation that goes completely unnoticed. You're moving through density, through resistance, through what feels like endless pressure. And then suddenly, without announcement, without ceremony, you realize you're breathing differently. The weight hasn't disappeared, but somehow you've stopped collapsing under it. This isn't happening by accident. You're here because something inside you has already shifted. And whether you've named it yet or not, you've crossed a threshold that most people never even find the courage to approach. Here's what sounds impossible, but is absolutely true. The mountain you've been staring at, convinced it would break you, convinced you'd never make it to the other side, you're already standing on the far slope. That internal battle you thought would never end, that version of yourself you were terrified you'd never have the strength to become, that impossible leap you didn't think you could survive, it's done. You did it. You walked through fire that should have consumed you. And somehow, impossibly, you kept moving. Your feet never stopped, even when every cell in your body was screaming to collapse. But here's where it gets strained. Here's what nobody explains about real transformation. Most people don't recognize the moment they've moved beyond their breaking point. They're so conditioned to scan for danger, so trained to anticipate the next collapse, that they completely miss the quiet miracle of their own evolution. They're so busy bracing for impact that they don't notice when the pain alchemizes into something else entirely. Not just strength, but a kind of cellular wisdom. A knowing that lives in your bones, not your thoughts. A certainty that no matter what arrives next, you possess the capacity to meet it. See, something happens in your nervous system when you've genuinely moved through enough. Your body stops interpreting every challenge as an existential threat. Your mind stops constructing elaborate catastrophe narratives because you've already lived through some of your worst-case scenarios and discovered something radical. You're still breathing. You're not just surviving anymore. You're actually expanding in places you didn't even know could expand, growing stronger in dimensions of yourself you'd never even accessed before. Right now, if you look around at the external landscape of your life, you might think nothing significant has shifted. Same responsibilities, same relationships, same daily patterns. But something has fundamentally changed, and it's everything. It's the way your nervous system responds when pressure arrives. It's the way you rest at night, without your mind spinning through endless permutations of what if. It's the way you can exist in stillness, without needing to fix or solve or prove anything to anyone watching. The hardest part wasn't about becoming fearless or flawless, or perpetually certain. The hardest part was learning to trust yourself at a level most people never access. Not trust that you'd always choose perfectly, or never feel terror, or never stumble again. Trust that you could feel terror and still take the next step. Trust that you could stumble and still rise. Trust that you could be imperfect, messy, human, and still be worthy of beautiful things arriving in your life. That kind of trust isn't manufactured in a moment. It's forged through thousands of micro-decisions, where you chose your own truth over your conditioning. You've probably been carrying a narrative about yourself for years, maybe decades. The story that said you lacked what was necessary, not strong enough, not brave enough, not worthy enough for the life you actually wanted to live. And somewhere in the journey, so quietly you almost missed it, that story started fracturing. Not because someone convinced you it was false, but because your own lived experience kept contradicting it. Your actions became the evidence that the old story was never accurate. It was just the only story you had language for back then. Every time you showed up, when every part of you wanted to hide. Every time you said no, when yes would have been the path of least resistance. Every time you chose truth over comfort, expansion over safety, authenticity over the approval of people who didn't really see you. Those weren't small moments. Those were acts of revolution happening at the cellular level. And they've been quietly rewiring the deepest architecture of who you are. They've been building undeniable proof that the old story about your limitations was never the truth. It was just the only version of yourself you knew how to inhabit at that time. If this is resonating with you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you stay connected to this frequency of transformation. But now you know something different. Not because someone taught you in a seminar or because you read it in a book and intellectually agreed. You know it because you've lived it. You've experienced what it feels like to be genuinely proud of yourself. Not proud of your accomplishments or accolades, but proud of the quality of your character. Proud of how you moved through something impossibly difficult with grace. Proud of how you stayed aligned with yourself when pretending would have been easier. Proud of how you kept your heart available even after it had been shattered. That pride isn't ego. It's recognition. Recognition of your own capacity. Recognition of your own evolution. Recognition that you've become someone who can be trusted with the weight and beauty of their own existence. And once you cross that threshold, once you know in the marrow of your bones that you can trust yourself to navigate whatever consciousness places in your path, everything in your reality shifts. The anxiety that used to keep you awake starts quieting because you're no longer attempting to control outcomes that were never yours to control in the first place. You're focused on what you actually have influence over, how you show up, how you respond, how you choose to move through the field of your life. The relationships that used to drain your energy start feeling different because you're no longer desperate for external validation. You're rooted in your own inherent worth. The decisions that used to paralyze you start feeling clearer because you're no longer asking what others expect or what you think you should do. You're asking what feels true, what feels aligned, what feels like it's emerging from the most honest part of your being. This is what it looks like when someone has genuinely moved beyond the hardest part. Not because life becomes simple or easy, but because you become someone who doesn't require life to be simple in order to thrive. You become someone who can find meaning in challenge, discover beauty in uncertainty, and locate strength in vulnerability. You become someone who understands that your power has never been about avoiding difficulty. It's about how you meet it. And here's the most beautiful part about where you're standing right now. This is just the beginning. You're not constructing a life around avoiding pain anymore. You're building one around embracing your full capacity, your complete range, everything you're capable of becoming. And that shift, that quiet revolution in how you relate to yourself and your circumstances, it transforms everything about what becomes possible in your field. There's a phenomenon that occurs in nature that mirrors what's happening in you right now. When a tree is struck by lightning, when it's burned, when it's damaged in ways that should destroy it, something remarkable happens. The tree doesn't just heal. It develops what's called reaction wood. Wood that's actually stronger, denser, more resilient than the original material. The trauma doesn't weaken the tree. It creates a structure that's more capable of withstanding future storms. You are that tree. Every challenge you've faced, every moment that should have broken you has been creating reaction wood in your consciousness. You're not just recovered, you're reinforced. This is the part that people don't understand about transformation. They think it's about returning to who you were before the difficulty. They think healing means going back to some previous state of innocence or ease. But that's not how consciousness evolution works. You don't go back. You can't go back. You've been fundamentally restructured at a level that most people never access. The person you were before the fire doesn't exist anymore. And that's not a loss. It's an emergence. You've become someone who carries wisdom in their cells. Someone who knows things that can't be taught, only lived. There's a moment that happens when you realize you've been operating from a completely different frequency. The conversations you have start going deeper without you forcing depth. The opportunities that arrive start matching who you actually are instead of who you thought you needed to perform as. The energy you bring to your days starts feeling sustainable instead of forced, authentic instead of manufactured. When you've genuinely moved beyond the hardest part, when you've developed this unshakable foundation within yourself, some people in your orbit won't know what to do with the new you. People will continue to expect reactions that no longer exist within you. They will persist in attempting to trigger old habits that have vanished. They will keep suggesting fixes for issues you have already transformed internally. Initially, this can feel isolating, not because you are superior, but because you are functioning from an entirely new place. Your choices now arise from peace rather than panic. Your decisions are guided by alignment instead of anxiety. Your responses come from wisdom rather than past wounds. This new frequency doesn't always align with the vibrations others emit. It's crucial to grasp that frequency isn't just a metaphor, it's literal. Everything in existence vibrates at a particular rate. Your thoughts, your feelings, your beliefs. After the work you've done and the experiences you've moved through, your fundamental frequency shifts. You are genuinely operating on a different wavelength. Much like a radio cannot play two stations simultaneously, you cannot sustain resonance with frequencies that no longer correspond to your own. I'm curious. Share in the comments the moment you realized you were functioning on a different frequency. What was the turning point that made you aware you had crossed into new territory? This is where confusion often arises. People assume something is wrong when old relationships start to feel uneasy. They believe they have become judgmental, cold, or detached. But that's not the case. What's happening is you've tuned into a different station, and trying to maintain connections with frequencies that no longer match yours results in static, dissonance, and exhaustion. It's not personal, it's physics. Some relationships will naturally adjust to this new dynamic. Those who truly care about your growth will celebrate the changes they see in you. They will appreciate that you no longer carry everyone's burdens. They will value the present version of you instead of the one constantly anxious about future disasters or stuck in past stories. These are the people who will rise alongside you, who will do their own inner work to meet you at your new level. These relationships deserve your care. However, other relationships may become strained, uncomfortable, or even painful. Those accustomed to your constant availability for their drama might not understand why you're now setting boundaries. Those who depended on your people-pleasing habits may feel puzzled when you decline without lengthy explanations. Those who connected with you through shared complaints might struggle to relate when you no longer engage in that frequency. This is where the real test appears, not in grand moments, but in the small ones. The text message you don't answer immediately. The request you refuse without guilt. The conversation you opt out of. The invitation you decline because it no longer aligns with your energy. These small instances are where your new foundation either strengthens or falls apart. These moments demand you choose yourself or abandon yourself. They determine whether your transformation is genuine or merely theoretical. This is the true test of your new foundation, not through major life upheavals or dramatic events, but through the subtle pressure to shrink back into your former self just to keep others comfortable. The temptation to reduce yourself to a size familiar to everyone else. The urge to apologize for your growth or downplay your transformation so others don't feel left behind. But here's the truth. You cannot unsee what you have seen. You cannot unknow what you now understand about your capabilities. You cannot unfeel the trust you have cultivated in yourself at this level. Trying to squeeze back into your old patterns would be like attempting to wear clothes from 10 years ago. Technically possible, perhaps, but deeply uncomfortable and utterly unnecessary. You have outgrown those patterns. They no longer fit the person you have become. Let me share something that might challenge you. The discomfort you experience when people resist your boundaries, question your changes, or try to guilt you for your growth. That discomfort is actually data. It's information revealing exactly who in your life supports your evolution and who was invested in your limitations. This information is valuable, even if painful at times. Because when you begin living from your new foundation, you stop tolerating what you once accepted. You stop justifying yourself to those unwilling to understand. You stop engaging in draining dynamics. You stop pretending certain behaviors are acceptable simply because they are familiar. This shift, this boundary setting, this refusal to engage with what no longer serves you, provokes reactions from those who benefited from your old patterns. Some will become angry, some hurt, some will accuse you of negative changes. Some will label you selfish, arrogant, or cold. You must understand something vital. Their reactions are not about you. They stem from losing access to a version of you that met their needs at your expense. They reflect their discomfort with transformation. They confront the mirror your growth holds up to their own stagnation. Instead, you get to practice something that would have terrified your former self. You get to allow others to be disappointed by your changes without taking on responsibility for their disappointment. You get to hold your boundaries firm, even when tested. You get to remain true to your new self-understanding, even when it inconveniences others, makes them uncomfortable, or when they try to make you feel guilty for your growth. This is not about becoming cold, detached, or uncaring. It's about becoming truly free. Free from the exhausting cycle of managing everyone else's emotional states. Free from the overwhelming pressure to be everything to everyone. Free from the belief that your worth depends on how much you sacrifice yourself for others. Free from the conditioning that your value is measured by how small you make yourself, so others can feel bigger. From this freedom emerges something genuinely beautiful. Relationships built on mutual respect rather than codependency. Connections that honor authenticity instead of rewarding performance. Interactions that leave you feeling energized and expanded rather than drained and diminished. You begin naturally attracting people who operate on the same frequency you have grown into. People who have done their own inner work. People who understand that healthy relationships require two whole individuals choosing to share their lives, not two incomplete people trying to fill each other's voids. People who can meet you at your new altitude. The work you've done on yourself, the growth you've achieved, the healing you've alchemized becomes magnetic in ways you cannot manufacture. Not because you're trying to attract anything specific, but because you are finally living as your authentic self. Authenticity has a remarkable power to draw in exactly what belongs in your field while naturally repelling what does not. You become like a tuning fork that resonates only with matching frequencies. This shift you're undergoing, this awareness that you've passed the hardest part, is what I call moving from unconscious transmission to conscious broadcasting. You have stopped being moved by the field and have started becoming the field itself. If this message resonates and you want to dive deeper into the full framework of how consciousness shapes reality at the quantum level, I've compiled everything into Beyond the Frequencies, a quantum guide to mastering consciousness, a step-by-step system for moving from seeking transformation to embodying it. The link is in the pinned comment below. Consider this. When you operated from your old patterns, wounds, and conditioning, you sent out a very specific signal into the field. That signal attracted matching frequencies, people who needed fixing, situations demanding your sacrifice, dynamics that kept you small. But now, Operating from this new foundation, you emit a completely different signal. That signal draws entirely different experiences. This is quantum mechanics unfolding in your everyday life. The observer effect, the idea that observation changes what is observed, is at work in every interaction you have. When you see yourself as powerful, worthy, transformed, you collapse the quantum field into experiences that reflect that view. When you hold yourself as someone who has passed the hardest part, as someone who has already won, reality has no choice but to mirror that truth back to you. Your days begin to feel fundamentally different. Not because external circumstances have completely transformed, but because your internal landscape has been rebuilt from the ground up. You wake up curious instead of anxious. You approach challenges with interest instead of dread. You navigate uncertainty with trust instead of fear. You meet each moment from a place of groundedness instead of reactivity. The voice in your head, the one that used to criticize and doubt and spiral constantly, it's still there sometimes, but it's no longer the dominant voice. It's been joined by something stronger, something steadier, something that sounds like wisdom and feels like coming home to yourself, something that knows who you are beneath all the conditioning, beneath all the stories, beneath all the fear. And this new voice, this voice of wisdom, it doesn't shout, it doesn't force, it doesn't demand, it simply knows. It speaks in quiet certainties instead of loud anxieties. It guides with gentle clarity instead of harsh criticism. It operates from trust instead of terror. And the more you listen to it, the more you attune to it, the more it becomes your default frequency, the more it becomes who you are. So, if this message found you today, it's because you're ready to stop questioning whether you've genuinely changed and start trusting what you already know at the deepest level. You're beyond the hardest part. That version of you that used to fragment under pressure, that used to need everything figured out before taking a single step, that used to wait for external permission to live your own life. That person served their purpose in your evolution, but they're not who you are anymore. You've transcended that version of yourself. Take a moment right here and comment below with this phrase: I trust my own transformation not as a casual interaction, but as an energetic declaration to the field, as a conscious interruption in the old loop, as a signal to the quantum field that you're claiming this new frequency. Drop that phrase in the comments and let it anchor this recognition in your system. The storm hasn't stopped raging in the external world. Life will continue throwing curveballs and uncertainty and moments that test everything you think you know about yourself. But you're different now. You're someone who can stand in the center of chaos and still know exactly who you are. Someone who can face the unknown without needing to control it into submission. Someone who's learned that your peace doesn't depend on your circumstances being perfect. Your peace is an internal state that you carry with you regardless of what's happening around you. Here's what's wild about this place you've reached. The challenges don't stop coming. The difficulties don't disappear. The external world doesn't suddenly become easier. But your relationship to all of it changes completely. Where you used to feel victimized by circumstances, you now feel curious about what they're teaching you. Where you used to collapse under pressure, you now expand into it. Where you used to resist difficulty, you now lean into it with interest. Not because you enjoy suffering, but because you know that difficulty is where growth lives. You know that pressure creates diamonds. You know that resistance is where transformation happens. This is the consciousness shift that most people never make. They spend their entire lives waiting for circumstances to change before they can feel okay. They tell themselves they'll be happy when they get the job, the relationship, the money, the house, the body, the recognition, and they die waiting. They never understand that the transformation has to happen internally first. That you have to become someone who's already at peace before peace can show up in your external reality. You've figured this out. You've cracked the code. You've discovered that you don't need anything outside yourself to feel whole. You don't need validation from others to know your worth. You don't need perfect circumstances to experience peace. You've learned that everything you've been searching for exists within you, has always existed within you, was just waiting for you to stop looking outside yourself long enough to notice it. If what you're feeling right now is touching something in you, if this content is landing in a place that feels true, then I invite you to subscribe, not just to this channel, but to this frequency, to this space where we explore what becomes possible when you're operating from your most authentic self. Subscribe not to consume content, but to stay connected to a community that's choosing transformation over comfort. To stay in this conversation about what it means to truly embody your power. You've crossed the threshold. You've moved from merely surviving to actually living. From reacting unconsciously to responding consciously. From hoping you're strong enough to knowing with absolute certainty that you already are. And that knowing, that unshakable foundation you've built within yourself through every challenge you faced, that's not going anywhere. It's permanent now. It's yours. You earned it through every difficult moment you refused to let define you. Every time you chose expansion over contraction. Every moment you decided to trust yourself, even when no one else believed in you. Here's what changes everything. When you realize your past, the hardest part. When you recognize that the transformation has already happened at the core level. That you stop waiting for permission to fully step into who you're becoming. You stop apologizing for taking up space. You stop shrinking yourself to make others comfortable. You stop playing small because you've remembered what it feels like to be fully alive, fully present, fully yourself. The people around you might not understand this shift at first. They might resist it. They might try to pull you back into old patterns because your transformation challenges something in them. But that's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to honor what you've moved through, to respect the journey you've taken, to trust the wisdom you've earned, to embody the frequency you've accessed. And as you do that, as you live from this new foundation, you become a walking example of what's possible. You become proof that transformation isn't just theoretical. It's real. It's embodied. It's accessible. You become a frequency that others can attune to, a signal that shows people what's available on the other side of their own hardest part. But let's go deeper here. Let's talk about what it actually means to be proof. Because you're not proof by preaching. You're not proof by telling everyone about your transformation. You're not proof by making everyone aware of how much you've changed. You're proof by simply being. By showing up as someone who's genuinely at peace. By responding to chaos with calm. By meeting difficulty with grace. By staying grounded when everyone else is spinning out. People don't need to hear about your transformation. They need to feel it. They need to sense that you're operating from a different place. They need to notice that their usual manipulation tactics don't work on you anymore. They need to see that you're not reactive, not desperate, not seeking their approval. And that noticing, that sensing, that recognition, it plants a seed in them. It shows them what's possible. It gives them permission to do their own work. This is where community becomes crucial. Because the more of us who embody this truth, who live from this frequency, who trust our own transformation, the more the collective field shifts. The more permission we give others to do the same. The more we normalize operating from wisdom instead of wounds, from alignment instead of anxiety, from trust instead of terror. Think about it like this. Every time you choose your new pattern over your old one, every time you maintain your boundary instead of collapsing it, every time you trust yourself instead of abandoning yourself, you're not just changing your own field. You're changing the collective field. You're sending ripples out into consciousness that say, This is possible. This is real. This can be done. And those ripples touch people you'll never meet. Influence situations you'll never see. Create possibilities that extend far beyond your individual life. This is the responsibility that comes with transformation. Not the responsibility to save everyone. Not the responsibility to fix everyone. Not the responsibility to prove yourself to everyone. The responsibility to embody your truth so fully that it becomes undeniable. The responsibility to live your transformation so completely that it gives others permission to attempt their own. The responsibility to hold your frequency steady even when others are trying to pull you back down to theirs. And here's something that might surprise you. This gets easier, not harder. The more you practice choosing yourself, the more natural it becomes. The more you honor your boundaries, the less guilt you feel. The more you trust your intuition, the louder it speaks. The more you align with your truth, the more obvious misalignment becomes. It's like building muscle. At first, it's difficult, uncomfortable, maybe even painful. But over time, it becomes your new baseline. It becomes who you are. You start noticing patterns you couldn't see before. You start recognizing red flags immediately instead of months later. You start trusting your first instinct instead of talking yourself out of it. You start saying no without guilt. Yes, without resentment, maybe without anxiety. You start operating from a place of clarity that used to feel impossible to access. And the most beautiful part is that this clarity isn't about having all the answers. It's not about never feeling confused or uncertain or afraid. It's about trusting yourself to navigate confusion, to sit with uncertainty, to move through fear. It's about knowing that you don't need to know everything in order to take the next step. You just need to trust that you have everything required for this moment right now. So, here's what I want you to do. Drop one word in the comments that captures the energy you're choosing right now. Not the energy you think you should choose, but the one that genuinely resonates in your system. One word that serves as your energetic signature to the quantum field. One word that declares who you're becoming, what you're embodying, what frequency you're claiming. And if you haven't already, subscribe. Not just to stay connected, but to stay coherent, to stay aligned with this frequency of transformation. To stay in community with others who are choosing the same path. Because this isn't a solo journey, we're doing this together. Each of us holding a frequency that makes it easier for the next person to access their own. The hardest part is behind you. And everything else, everything that comes next, is simply you discovering what becomes possible when you're finally free to be who you've always been. Underneath all the fear, underneath all the conditioning, underneath all the stories that were never true in the first place. You are past the breaking point. You are beyond the collapse. You are standing in your power, whether you fully recognize it yet or not. And from this place, from this new foundation, there is no limit to what you can create, who you can become, what reality you can step into. The transformation has already happened. Now it's just about living it, embodying it, trusting it, and watching as everything in your external reality begins to reflect the internal shift you've already made. You've won. You just need to start living like someone who knows they've already won. But what does it actually mean to live like someone who's already won? It means you stop fighting battles that don't matter. It means you stop trying to prove yourself to people who will never see you. It means you stop explaining your choices to people who aren't invested in understanding them. It means you stop waiting for the perfect moment and recognize that every moment is the perfect moment when you're operating from your truth. Living like someone who's already won means you approach each day from abundance instead of scarcity, from possibility instead of limitation, from curiosity instead of fear. It means you stop asking, "What if I fail?" and start asking, what if I succeed beyond my wildest expectations? It means you stop protecting yourself from disappointment and start opening yourself to delight. Here's the final truth I want to leave you with. The hardest part wasn't the external challenges you faced. It wasn't the relationships that ended, the losses you endured, the failures you experienced. The hardest part was learning to stop abandoning yourself, learning to stop betraying your own knowing, learning to stop sacrificing your truth for someone else's comfort. And you've done that work. You've learned that lesson. You've earned that wisdom. And now you get to experience what it's like to live in full alignment with yourself. To wake up each day knowing that you're not betraying yourself anymore. To move through your life trusting that you're on your own side. To face challenges knowing that no matter what happens, you won't abandon yourself. There's something profound that happens when you reach this level of self-trust. Your entire relationship with time shifts. You stop living in the future, constantly worried about what might go wrong. You stop living in the past, constantly replaying what did go wrong. You start living in the present moment, fully inhabiting your own life, fully present to what's actually happening right now. And that presence, that ability to be here now, it changes everything about how you experience reality. Most people are never fully present. They're physically here, but mentally somewhere else. They're having dinner, but thinking about tomorrow's meeting. They're with their loved ones, but replaying yesterday's argument. They're moving through their days on autopilot, never fully landing in any moment. But you've learned something different. You've learned that the present moment is the only place where your power exists. The only place where you can make choices. The only place where life is actually happy. This is why you're past the hardest part, because you've learned to be here, to be present, to be available to your own life, instead of constantly escaping it through worry or regret or distraction. And that presence is what allows transformation to not just happen, but to stick, to become permanent, to integrate into every cell of your being. Think about how much energy you used to spend trying to control things that were never yours to control. How much mental bandwidth you used to waste running scenarios that never happened. How much emotional capacity you used to burn through managing other people's feelings. All of that energy is available to you now. All of that power is back in your system. All of that life force is yours again. And what do you do with it? You create, you build, you express, you contribute. You become someone who's not just healed, but generative. Someone who's not just recovered, but expansive. Someone who's not just surviving, but thriving in ways that inspire others to believe they can do the same. This is the stage of transformation that few people talk about. Everyone focuses on the breaking down, the dark night of the soul, the struggle and the pain. But nobody talks enough about what happens after, about the rebuilding, about the emergence, about what it's like to step into a version of yourself that you never even knew was possible. You're not who you thought you would become. You're better. You're deeper. You're more real. You're more aligned. You're more powerful in the ways that actually matter. Not power over others, but power with yourself. Not power to control outcomes, but power to respond to whatever arrives with grace and wisdom and trust. And here's what's remarkable about this place you've reached. You're not finished. You're not complete. You're not done growing. But you're also not broken anymore. You're not fragmented. You're not lost. You've found the ground beneath your feet. You've located the center within yourself. You've accessed the part of you that was never damaged in the first place. The part that's always been whole, always been wise, always been exactly what you needed. Some people call this your higher self. Some call it your soul. Some call it consciousness. Some call it the observer. The name doesn't matter. What matters is that you've made contact with it. You've established a relationship with it. You've learned to hear its voice and trust its guidance. And that connection, that relationship, that's what makes you unstoppable now. Because when you're connected to that part of yourself, when you're operating from that place, you stop being moved by external circumstances. You stop being manipulated by other people's emotions. You stop being controlled by your own fear. You become like a mountain, rooted, stable, unshakable. Storms can rage around you. Winds can howl. Rain can pour. But you remain steady. You remain centered. You remain yourself. This doesn't mean you don't feel. You feel everything, maybe even more deeply than before. But you're not swept away by your feelings. You're not identified with them. You can have fear without being fear. You can experience sadness without becoming sadness. You can feel anger without letting anger have you. This is emotional sovereignty. This is what it means to be a mature human being who's done their work. And the world needs this from you. The world needs people who have done their work, who have faced their shadows, who have integrated their wounds, who have learned to trust themselves. The world needs people who can stay calm in chaos, who can speak truth in confusion, who can hold space when everyone else is falling apart. The world needs you exactly as you've become. Not because you're perfect, not because you have all the answers, not because you never struggle, but because you've learned to struggle consciously. You've learned to fall apart without losing yourself. You've learned to be uncertain without being paralyzed. You've learned to be human in the fullest sense of what that means. That's the transformation. That's the shift. That's the threshold you've crossed. And everything else that unfolds from here is simply the universe reflecting back to you the truth you finally claimed, that you are worthy. You are capable. You are enough exactly as you are right now in this moment. The hardest part is behind you. And what's ahead is not easier necessarily, but it's different. It's lighter. It's more joyful. It's more authentic. It's more aligned with who you actually are instead of who you thought you had to be. It's more connected to what you actually want instead of what you thought you should want. It's more expressive of your true nature instead of the mask you used to wear to keep yourself safe. You're safe now. Not because nothing bad will ever happen again, but because you trust yourself to handle whatever does happen. You know you can survive. You know you can adapt. You know you can grow. You've proven it to yourself over and over again. And that proof, that evidence, that lived experience, it's the foundation that nothing can shake. So, welcome to the other side. Welcome to life after the hardest part. Welcome to the version of yourself that you fought so hard to become. You've earned this. You've earned every moment of peace, every moment of joy, every moment of alignment that's coming your way. You've earned the right to trust yourself, to love yourself, to be yourself without apology or explanation. The hardest part is behind you. Welcome to what comes.